Imagine a conscious contact with God so strong that no matter what you are doing or not doing, that no matter what your kids are up to or not up to, and that whether you've got the person of your dreams or they're just not cooperating, that you are happy, content, and at peace. A space where everyone else's thoughts, attitudes, and actions are beautiful and exactly as they are supposed to be. Well, this is the space where I like to play. My name is Misha Z, and this is today's Bitch Slap. Join me as I shed light on the thoughts, actions, and attitudes that are causing you pain, and we train our minds to go to the capital S inner self, the joy that is waiting for us, the God within.
John Abate, good afternoon, and welcome to the Bitch Slap podcast.
I'm stoked to be here, Misha. Thanks for having me on, man. Great to looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, man, you made it. And usually you're stationed in Encinitas, California area, North County, San Diego, and I guess I've got you in Maine or something.
You got me on East Coast time. I'm in Connecticut. Yeah, grew up in Connecticut, here with family. Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome on board. And you know, the overriding theme of the podcast, of course, are those moments, those aha moments in life, or those moments where we get sort of shellacked and we get a relook at things, hopefully from a spiritual viewpoint, and have it be a growth opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So we can always point back to that. If we get too off path, we can always come back to that. So we have a history. So I thought, why not start with a little bit of our history? And that was how long ago now? 12 to 15 years ago, we worked together in the mortgage business, correct?
Yeah, it's amazing to think that it was that long ago, especially after we reconnected. It just feels like yesterday again, brother.
Right. And then I was your boss. Yes.
You were my boss, man.
Yeah,
you were the boss, man.
I was the boss, man. That's so crazy. What? I was a boss. Everybody listening and watching, I was a boss. Yeah.
And let me tell you something. You wore it well, Misha. You wore it well.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
I think, and so back then, you and I, or at least I was, and I know, you know, the environment was very much close the deal, generate business, crank numbers, right? Like we were hard charging go-getters.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, the environment was, it was a high stress environment, right? But I mean, it was kind of risk reward, you know, how much. I don't think I looked at the risks. I don't know. Did you at the time when you were in the moment? Like I felt like,
no, I didn't. You know, I didn't see much. Yeah, the risk side of things was what, if we were to frame it that way, it would be like lost time with family that I'll never get back, or lost time with kids, or strained relationships. Like I wasn't thinking risk. That wasn't like the risk to me. What was the risk? The risk was lost revenue opportunity if I didn't push a little bit harder.
Yeah, but you know what? Also, I would say not only the revenue, but just the game of it.
Yeah.
Lost deals. I got to get that deal. I got to bring in the fish. I got to bring in the big fish. We were hunters. Yeah, we were hunters, man.
Yeah.
Your environment was definitely conducive to people that were type A, you know, hit the desk at the market opens. We're hitting the desk at whatever hours in the morning, 7 in the morning, and just firing away. And that's sales. That's life.
That's sales, right? Lots of follow up. It was follow up, close the deal. You know, I think one thing to spin a positive light on it, I do believe that at least I was coming at it from a service aspect. So I was trying to be helpful and find people that it made sense. So it wasn't, I think a lot of that time people were just churning and burning, right? People didn't know any better to know whether does this fiscally or financially make sense for the borrower. But I think what was good about Wells Fargo is we were very much trying to make sure that, and we did make sure that that there was a benefit, for the borrower, benefit the
Yeah.
borrower.
Benefit the bar. Well, we came out of an interesting time too. I mean, not to belabor this topic too much about the work, but we came out of an interesting time where the entire market just crashed, right? At least when I joined you back in,
Okay.
what was it, '08? So lending rules
Oh,
had tightened and everything was real.
yeah.
So
Okay.
we were held to a higher standard. But I think to your
Mm,
point, Misha, uh, you're right. I mean, we weren't a chop shop. We ran a team that really looked at the benefit to our customer, our client, and made sure that we were forging good relationships. And you did a lot of business, man. You were top guy in the region, right? I mean, it
yeah.
was so you were held to a high standard too.
Yeah.
So it was a high pressure environment, but it was also, I learned a ton. I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from the people around me.
Yeah.
But God, it feels like a totally different life ago.
Absolutely. And I really just wanted to bring it up because I mean, it is a different life for us. Anybody that knows us now, or me, I'll speak for me. It's like, you what? You were what? Like, wait, what? Like, I mean, I still have that A type side. I still have, a constant thing for me is to try and quell that competitive edge, right? Because for me, that creates separation. And I'm sure we're going to have an opportunity to talk about that feeling of separation. I mean, right? Like, does that
Yeah,
resonate at all when I say that?
that resonates with me as well. And I can't help but to think, and looking at us both now, I think when you and I both reconnected, our hair was a little longer. they
Yeah,
wouldn't let us in. They wouldn't let us into the building with the hair that we've got today.
that's right. Yeah,
you
give us
know,
a profile. Give us a quick profile so we can see your. Oh yeah,
I'm sporting a man bun,
yeah,
right? So this is, I don't know how much I'm going to do in a business environment if I'm letting it all flow, but at least I'm still pulling it back. But no, and I think just the last, like, to put a period on all of that, I think it's interesting because, um, the shift from going from a high pressure environment career, I saw just a gradual change in, we can get into how and why, but just a gradual change in the environment that I found myself in that fulfilled me professionally, career wise. And I
yeah,
feel like it's just been a steady progression of just slowing things down a little bit, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that can be like a function of age or a function of wisdom or experience, or not that one is bad or the other. I think it's more of like, is it a good fit? Am I playing in the space that I need to play? Right. And I think for me, like my time there had clearly run its course. Right. So, like, let's pivot. But
Yep.
is that a good way to frame it too? I think.
Absolutely. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you're an avid bike rider. When I say biker, like road, like pedal bike. What do you call that in your circles?
Yeah, you're almost there, man. You're dancing around it. It's cycling. So road cycling is my, like, I think when I joined you back in '08, I found cycling as like the one thing, talking about high pressure, that was the cathartic release of energy for me and stress. Like, I'd get
Mm,
on my bike and just I'd ride. I was living in Oceanside at the time, and I started riding my bike from like Oceanside to Carlsbad, Oceanside to Encinitas, Oceanside to Cardiff, Oceanside. Like, I was ending up like down in Del Mar and back, and I'm like, this might as well be the Tour de France for this guy right here. And it was the greatest thing ever. It was like I literally found cycling through just needing a release, and that was
mm.
it. So that's my thing from like this, from the sport perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2008, then you, or 7 or 9, or when did it grip you and you went full force?
I did my first bike race in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah, I did my first bike race with a local club out of Encinitas called Swamis, the
Yeah.
Swami Cycling Club. And their
Yeah.
tagline was the gurus of cycling, of which I couldn't tell you what a guru was back then. Like, how ironic, right? Here we are, like,
Oh,
living in the world of Paramahansa Yogananda's, like,
Yeah.
kingdom, and there it is. But I was like, that looks like a cool group of people. I like the color of their uniforms. So I joined that club, and I just quickly it took, and they had a racing club, and I was off and running. It just really, it bit me pretty good.
Yeah. So 2007, that time, that's really where, okay, this is my release. This is my happy place, to that release valve you're talking about. Did you just dabble in cycling up until that point, or was it like, no, you in 2000, no, you just went full force? Wow, there's a thing called a bicycle, and I'm going to go join the club and go
Yeah.
race right out of the
Yeah.
gate.
Yeah, I wasn't one that like started as a junior. A lot of like competitive cyclists start really young. So
Uh-huh.
I was one that just kind of played around on two wheels all my life, but never anything like passion wise.
Okay.
I went to school in Colorado, and I had an opportunity to uh, really just play on the mountain bike. I didn't even really do much of racing other than like
Mm.
some just really like local stuff that were like, kind of throw together races in the foothills outside of Fort Collins. But a road bike to me was just an anathema idea. I just was like, I'm not wearing spandex and shading my legs and riding skinny tires. What the hell are you doing? Right. And lo and behold, I ended up falling in love with the sport of road cycling and racing competitively. And racing road cycling fuels our personality types, that type A, just highly competitive, always trying to stay ahead, marginal gains in your nutrition, your bike, the weight, and all that stuff. So
Grams. We're talking grams on the bike, right?
we're talking
Grams.
grams. And so it fed that for me. It did, for sure.
And there's a reason, I want everybody to know, there's a reason we're getting in depth with bikes, and we're gonna talk about that story in a minute. But I think everybody will see why I think biking's fascinating. My brother Nick, if you're listening, hello, love you. He has been an avid cyclist his whole life, so was definitely into road racing for a long time, and now his big thing in his mid 50s is the downhill mountain biking. He travels all over the place doing the mountain biking, but his buddies are always getting hurt. Somehow he doesn't get hurt. I don't know how.
Downhill mountain biking, you've seen it, I'm sure, but it's gnarly. Like it takes a serious commitment to like huck yourself down a mountain as fast as you can.
Yeah. Check this out. I have some stats for you, and everybody's going to love this. So, skiing, obviously, skiing.
Yeah.
So the skier days on a mountain, so like Whistler or Mammoth or Breckenridge or Jackson Hole, the skier, like one person per 1,000 skiers gets hauled off the mountain at any given time. All right. On mountain biking, it's like 1 out of 12.
That's crazy.
You know how because all the mountains have opened up in the summer to allow people to go up on the lifts. They've built all these tracks. So people are just blowing themselves up.
They are. It's good.
Right.
It's good to know that Nick hasn't been a statistic yet, man, because they're like in pads and helmets and the whole bit. Like just,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Anyway. So I love the language, and I get the grams, saving the grams to get that much more speed. So it's an outlet for you. And then what is your existence immediately overnight freaking almost kills you, right? So there's an accident.
Yeah.
6-7 years ago, you get hit by a car.
I got hit by a car right like a half a mile from my house in Leucadia. Yeah, 2016. Yeah, August will be my 6th anniversary. August 16th, I got hit. I was heading out for. You want to know the story? Do you want me to tell you? Yeah, I'll give you the details. I can give you I can give you the potted details. So part of being the bike racer is putting a lot of time in on the road, putting a lot of miles in, long rides, endurance type rides, intensity type rides. So it was a Sunday morning, a good
And we're
friend of
talking
mine,
like 100 miles, 50 to 100-mile rides, right?
easily. This mileage,
Okay.
the mileage that I was going on this particular ride, the morning I was hit, was you leave the coast in Leucadia and you go out to Ramona and you do this big loop all out around East County and come back. By the time you're done, it's like 89, 90 miles, and you've done 8,000 feet of climbing. It's a big, solid, Sunday group ride.
Okay.
And group rides are really just, some people like to train by themselves, but for the most part, it kind of sucks, right? So you have people with you and you're motivated, you can push each other. So 7:00 Sunday morning, I'd get up, I'd meet my friend in my neighborhood who also was a training buddy with me, and we would just start to head up Leucadia Boulevard and head east for this bike ride, for this group ride. And we were riding in the bike lane up by Quail Gardens, Encinitas Ranch Golf Course. And I was mid-sentence talking about how beautiful I thought the lake was on the golf course when I got hit from behind at like 50 miles an hour by a car. And it was one of those things where, Misha, I'd never heard a thing, never saw anything. It was the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital days later, kind of coming to.
So do you remember the actual getting hit part, or?
It's interesting that you asked that question. There's something, and I don't know if that's just locked away in the subconscious or not, or maybe just pushed down for my body protecting me. But there's something about the impact that I tend to think I recall, but I don't have any details about. I couldn't tell you what it sounded like, but I remember being jolted, I think is what I remember, feeling something, but otherwise nothing. I mean, it was just
literally 1 minute you're, gosh, it's beautiful out. You come to 3 days later.
That was really about what had happened. The driver had hit me from behind in the bike lane, and they estimated by the distance that I was thrown from the bike.
Sorry.
That's how they, I mean, they're using they're breaking out their apogee, or and like looking at the, like the calculations, but I was thrown 40 feet. So they had estimated.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I was thrown 40 feet and landed. Luckily, I didn't land in the street in the road, but I landed, like off the side of a sidewalk on in some brushy grass and bushes. And and I was thrown 12 feet high in the air. And so there was a pine tree that was on the side of the road that I barely missed. And the highest limb up was over 10 feet. They estimated 12 feet. So my friend was, it was like
angulated.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing the triangulation calculation, right? And my friend is riding alongside me. We're riding shoulder to shoulder because the bike lane there is wide enough that you can do that. And he said it was just like you had been shot out of a cannon. Like 1 minute you were there and the next minute you were gone. And you were like mid-sentence talking about how pretty the morning was. When I landed, I immediately compound fractured my leg, because if I throw you 40 feet, 12 feet up at that velocity, being hit at 50 miles an hour, you're breaking bones. And so I had a compound leg fracture.
Compound means through skin?
Through skin. Yep. So my left leg was a compound tibia fibia fracture. I broke bones in my face, scapula, ribs, lacerated my liver, and I had a severe spinal injury. I had shattered L1 and cracked L2. So I was in bad shape, man. I was in bad shape.
You're in bad shape. Let me ask you, before we talk about that, tell me about your friend who saw this. What's your guys' relationship these days?
It's a great question. Yeah. My friend Kelly, it's interesting. I don't know. I've never really asked him how that incident affected him personally.
Yeah.
But I know, first of all, I mean, our relationship is as strong as ever. I mean, he's a
Oh,
brother.
yeah,
He is a
cool.
brother. I mean,
Yeah.
and a friend of mine before we started, which was, wonderful, but, at my bedside and there taking calls and trying to coordinate, people during the time of the accident, and has just been a great friend, and someone that, kind of, I don't know if that's, a feeling of guilt or remorse that I was the one that got hit. I mean, we were
Mm.
riding shoulder to shoulder, and it was just a matter of,
Millimeters
that's it. And it could have been either one of us, both of
or
us,
both, right?
it could have, yeah, could have
Yeah.
mowed us both down. So, you know, great question. Still a really close friend of mine. We talked a lot about just that day, and but I get the sense that he's at peace, that he knows that I'm
Mm.
healthy and strong, and
Yeah.
we got to ride our bikes together again after I got healed up. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, cool. I don't know. I'm glad
Well,
you guys are still friends, and that's good. And
that's the cool part.
yeah,
Yeah. But there
yeah,
was a lot of, but the the rub of the whole thing was that the driver never stopped. So it ended up being a hit and run accident. So that was really like, that created a lot of emotional tension with obviously him. And
um,
I would say for a minute myself as well, which was kind of what sort of pushed me into my path that I am today, with allowing myself to forgive this person, but also just friends and in the community. I mean, the cycling community is a tight knit community. It's a
yeah,
brotherhood and a sisterhood, and so people were out looking for this driver.
yeah.
Uh, you know,
Never surfaced, huh?
Never did.
Maybe I think of two things, right? Is one, obviously, this is a bitch slap moment for you. And I say that with like one of the worst days of your life, but at the same time, a massive turning point for the good in hindsight, right? Which is what we're going to talk about, I think. I mean, it's a start of your recent or transformation. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to put
100%.
words in your mouth. Yeah.
You're exactly right. That was it.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's interesting too. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm thinking of this hit and run aspect of it now. That's a whole nother layer that like forces your hand of like, I gotta find forgiveness, or maybe I'm gonna mentally go insane, or the anger will kill me, or whatever. I guess there's so many ways to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I don't know where it came from, Misha. I don't know where I found this ability to just let go of that, but it happened. Fortunately for me, it happened quickly. When I was in the hospital, I'd spent a total of about 14 or 15 days in hospital, and right around day 3, I was receiving visitors. I had a group of men that came in from AA,
Yeah.
from a program of sobriety,
Yeah.
um, to bring me healing energy and just be with me. And you know, I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was the group consensus of the energy. I mean, nobody was saying anything about what had happened. Just they were there, and I asked everybody to join hands and just pray for the driver. I said, please,
Mm.
I need to do this. And I want you to join me in praying for the driver, that he's not suffering, and to help me forgive him. And I can't tell you, this wasn't a premeditated thing. This just happened. And I don't know if it was an act of grace, if it was some type of, call it what you will, some piece of divinity moving through us. But it turned out to be one of the most beautiful moments that I've experienced. And certainly others that were there would attest to it. It was a very, very cathartic, very peaceful opportunity to just say, let's do what we can to just pray for this person. Not let's pray we find them, not
Oh,
let's hunt this guy down and rattle sabers. You know what I mean? It wasn't
yeah.
anything like that at all. It was just about
Love.
love, because I just sensed that there was some act of grace that was moving me in the path of recognizing, and intuitively I knew I needed this to start healing, man. I needed this to I had a lot to go through, so we do this for us. This is what I got from this is that, we do these things for us, more so for us than the other. But the byproduct is that the other gets to receive it.
Yeah. I think too, it's such a powerful, when you find that forgiveness, that's such a powerful testament, or people get to witness what that does for you. And then the ripple effect of that forgiveness, where there's going to be people that are like, how can you forgive him? Like, you still should be looking for him, or like, right. I guess that forgiveness, then it takes away the victimhood, and then you get to grow, and you get to not blame, and you get to just so much. And then that, again, that ripple effect out to the people that witness that in you is so powerful. I
would say that you're right on. And you said something that actually I can tell you with certainty and evidence, that after that moment, several months later, when I started going back to the meetings, I had some of those men, there were 10 of those men in the room with me. I had some of those men come up to me and tell me that was something they couldn't understand at the time, because I think some of them went in there, or at least the ones that were sharing this with me went in there with a sense of like you said, we got to find this person, and animosity and all of this too. They moved into a space of, it taught me something, that if something so traumatic can happen, something so tragic can happen like that, something so awful, and you find a way to find, the ability to say, let's forgive this person, it helped them to put things into perspective about what's worth worrying over, what's worth, holding on to and resenting over. Right. Yeah. So they told me this, and that moved me as much as what we did. So there was that ripple effect, like you said, that was really incredible, to not just wonder about it. I wonder if that actually helped anybody. It truly helped a few of those men that I talked to.
Yeah. And I think what's the older I get, and the more experience I have around these types of circumstances, or forgiveness, or just a simple smile for somebody, it is so much more powerful than we know. And sometimes we're graced with source or God or higher power saying, here's a little taste or glimpse of what you're bringing,
Yeah, I think that was it. I think I call it an act of grace. I think that's the easiest way for me to sort of extrapolate all of the, ontological or esoteric things about God or spirit or nature, and just say, this is where the rubber meets the road. I watched something happen that I can't explain, and I still can't tell you, because I don't know where it came from, man. Maybe I was primed in some way prior to being there. I had just gotten sober a year prior to that in 2015. So I definitely was on a path of some sort. So perhaps that could be it.
That's the teachings of recovery in action, right? Finding forgiveness for ourselves and others. I mean, that's a part of sometimes it isn't said that way, but I believe in recovery, or 12 steps. It's hey, we are searching for forgiveness. There's amends, there's accountability, there's all these themes. And so to have that seed planted perhaps a year ago, pre-bike accident, then bike accident, and it's there it is in action in a big way, right?
And it wasn't ironic that those people that we share those same, steps with, were there when that all happened as well. So it was just a wonderful experience. That hospital room was just, it was a beacon of light, man. It was really cool. Yeah.
So you get sober a year before that, and so you start changing. Now you're all. We'll cut to the chase a little bit. You've got mindful based stress reduction. You teach mindful based stress reduction classes. You're heavy into mindfulness, and this whole the guru, the Swami's Guru Bike Club has that whole new meaning that you talk about, or just digging deep on all these sort of I mean, mindfulness is a word that's thrown about all the time, but I maybe you can say it better than I am, but anyway, so you're heavy in that space right now of slowing down. But back then, so a year before you get sober and then you're hit by a bike. I want to get a sense of, does the bike thing, is that like that pushes you even more towards this new space you're in? Or was it are you convinced you were headed in that direction anyway? Or no, the bike was the catalyst does that question make sense?
Totally makes sense. I guess I'd have to answer you in two parts. I think that there was already the seed, as you had mentioned, that was already planted. In getting sober, we know that we start to search for something greater than ourselves and a higher power. We start to have a practice of meditation. I had dabbled in some meditation beyond just that, just years in college, and just sort of poked around the spiritual bear, but it never really just sat and resonated with me in a felt way, right? So I think there was a portion of that, but my accident allowed me to find the path of mindfulness as a modality to heal myself. Because look, now I'm laid up on the couch. I'm in a shell that I can't move around because my back is fused. My leg is propped, I can't move, right? So I'm just devouring books and reading. And somehow something popped up, and I don't know how I found it, on mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, as a modality of healing, not only the physical body, but also the mind. And so for people that have suffered traumatic injury, traumatic experiences, not to be the only qualification to be interested in MBSR, but there's many that find the mindfulness-based stress reduction through a traumatic event. So the accident propelled me in, just like, I want to find an alternative way to heal, not just dropping all the Western way of going to PT, taking medication, but I didn't want to stay on the medication, and I wanted to just be with what I was experiencing. And so I started the practice as a way to heal my body, and also what was happening in my head, right? Because I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of, will I ever be able to race competitively again? What happened to that driver? How could he do that? What's going on with my body? All of these things. And so mindfulness gives me the opportunity, or gave me the opportunity, to start turning everything back inward as a healing method.
And again, I think I sort of glossed over the fact, or skipped that, like, you were cracked up, man. Like, you were beat up, like full body cast, like you're saying, like you were, or I don't know, am I saying that right?
You've got it right. When you have a spinal fusion, basically you have a thoracic brace that looks like a tortoise shell. So you're not moving around. I'm on a walker if I can, get up. I had the benefit of having friends and people as close as family able to look after me. And I don't think that was by accident. I think that was, people are placed in your life.
Get sober, so you had community to help versus you pushed everybody away, right?
100%, man. If that was the old John 1.0, I'm not sure that they'd be lining up at the door. Not that they were, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they push you the rest of the way off the cliff.
Yeah, you're almost done. We wanted you finished off, so here we go, man. Yeah.
So, all right. So you're healing. You found MBSR, mindful based stress reduction, as a way to heal your body physically, obviously, but then also the mind. It's an opportunity to heal the mind, or be free of the prison of the mind. I guess I was just talking to this police officer. I just interviewed this policeman, our age. Well, he's my age. I can't remember how old you are. He's 52, just about to turn 53. And he is a black policeman in Philadelphia. And where he is in was a policeman. He patrolled for a decade and then, got promoted past that or whatever, but it was like the gnarliest part of Philadelphia. It's like Watts in LA or just where you have a vision of like the chaos. But where was I going with this?
Did he find mindfulness somehow?
Well, I can't remember where I was going with this, but where was I going with this?
I want to hear about this guy actually, because I know Philadelphia can be, dodgy as ever, especially being a cop. I can imagine.
Yeah. What were you telling me that made me think about him? But
well, we were talking a little bit about just, like how I had come to find it, and the trauma that I had gone through. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. We all have our traumas, right? I'm sure
he
had trauma, didn't he? Didn't he? When you talked to him, was it a lot of that, like what he saw and his?
It was the prison of the mind. It was the prison of the mind. He was very. So he, well, the funny part was this dude was such a massive heart and such a warm man and a catalyst for massive change. But also he was like, yeah, I'd be out there, on the streets, and you got to rough people up, bare knuckle them a little bit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But then he's like, then I'd be preaching after preaching at the night, And it was just the way he said it. But we were talking about that freedom of the mind. So he's like, hey, he was very clear on the illusion of jail being the prison. It's the mind, right? Like, so he's like, hey, yeah, like, although I might be working with a lot of literal prisoners, he goes, there's plenty of the world that, man, they're in a prison of the mind. And these tools that I literally help prisoners with are applicable to you and me, right? Who are just, we might be free on the streets, but we're right. We're still
jailed in the. I mean, well, nobody embodies that better than Nelson Mandela. To be jailed for 30 plus years, and when asked what his state of mind was, he was constantly free behind bars, always free.
Yeah.
That is a reality. It's paradoxically, it's a tough one for people to recognize. Like, if you put me behind bars, I will go nuts. I will just be in the worst mental state. But with some practice and a little tweak of the dial of the mind here in the right direction, we can be free in any moment. And this is what mindfulness teaches you. Yeah.
So anyway, Curtis Gee, the police officer, cool. Billy, look for that podcast episode.
I want to hear this. Yeah, I like that.
Good. So anyway, you're dabbling on it on a personal level, and at some point in your story here, you're like, all right, I want to. The way I have been helped and healed mentally, physically, I want to bring it to other people. But before we get to that, somewhere in there, you're doing it. You're having positive effects on your physical side, your mental side, and then you opened JoJo bars, right? That was your business for a while.
So I was. Yep. So I had started a company. As a matter of fact, my business partner and I had launched the company 4 months before my accident. So throw all of that on top of now I'm laid up and I can't work. And, so we had started an energy bar, nutrition bar company, JoJo bars. And, I'll tell you, the confluence of events that happened, it couldn't have been more than we were so excited, and I'm sidelined now for 6 months and I can't do any, I can be on the computer, but I'm not able to get up and move around and go see customers and do all these things, all the heavy lifting that you need to do to run a business, right? You've got to be able to be physically present. So I started a business, and, we kept the business running for 5 years plus after that. It kept going, but it was challenging.
So when in between the business to where now if I understand correctly, you've released your vested interest in the business, and now you consult for them or something like that happened in there. And then somewhere along the way, you're like, hey, I want to get, I don't know if certified's the right word, but you want to learn the techniques officially of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe talk
Yeah.
about that arc a little bit. Or
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's important to know that like I found the benefit of actually healing through mindfulness. And so just quickly, mindfulness-based stress reduction or a mindful practice doesn't alleviate pain, right? So like I didn't just miraculously not feel pain and just recover overnight. Like I still had to do all the things and go to PT and go to my doctor's appointments and like do all the like what I like to call the mechanical things
okay,
that we need to do, right?
yeah,
But the mindfulness part of it is like you said, it's freeing yourself from the story, the attachment of the pain, or what is going to occur that hasn't occurred yet. Like I'm never going to be able to do this, or I may never race again. Like I had doctors telling me, you won't race competitively again, not with a 5-level spinal fusion and a rod in your leg. And if you do, you'll be lucky, if you're competitive. And 9 months after my accident, I went out and won my first bike race.
yeah,
Like I overcame some serious obstacles. And I'm not saying that mindfulness just made it all happen, but it was the touchstone moment in my recovery, in my physical and emotional recovery through the accident, that I had the opportunity to see like, if I put my mind right, I can do almost anything, And so that's really important. Just like that was the shift for me. So I ended up taking the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course at UCSD, which is like the flagship university where all the teaching and the teacher training happens and the classes. It's UCSD and University of Massachusetts. Those two institutions are really like the center for where a lot of this comes from. And so I took the 8-week course, and it just was, it had affirmed everything that I was learning just on my own through books and practicing on my own. And mindfulness-based stress reduction really, Misha, is just, it's a practice of meditation, a practice of breathing, a practice of moving mindfully in what might look like hatha yoga to you, paying close attention on purpose without any judgment of what your body's doing, what your mind's doing, and just dropping into present moment awareness. And we can do this in any moment, right?
yeah,
So that gave me the tools to, heal, took the course, and it just resonated that like I went through this and healed, and I, came back almost feeling like 100%, like I was racing competitively at a high level, training again, and that's not just the barometer for like me being back, but it was also my mental state was like,
yes,
I was happy, I was content, I was at peace. I found a way to forgive, and I was able to use my mindful practice and meditation and just exploring those feelings, and having compassion, right?
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So you had said something interesting. I liked how you said the mindful based stress reduction MBSR didn't Joe Dispenza you overnight. Like, and no knock to Joe Dispenza and all of that, but there's some of this illusion that if I buy into some modality, I'm going to overnight defy God or whatever. And I say that with love. The shit's going on all over the place. What I heard you say was, yeah, that wasn't the circumstances. What I needed to do, the mechanical stuff to heal, the physical therapy, which when you're coming out of that kind of an injury, that stuff that's gnarly, right? That's heavy. I mean, it's pain rehabbing from that. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you've got to put your body through some really difficult things to get back to healing. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I shouldn't have said that. What about Joe Dispenza? Love you, Joe Dispenza, and everybody who loves Joe Dispenza. God bless.
You can edit it out later. Whatever.
Yeah, right. And I don't know. I only know enough to be ignorant and say comments like that. So whatever. I'm still human. But so there was no Southern Baptist walk again. It was like there we go. That's a better analogy. It was like, hey man, this mindfulness based stress reduction is going to put you in a place where you can stay in the moment and not project, worry about the pain that you're going to feel in physical therapy or PT now and in the future. Or, I mean, talk about that, right? Because I think like it's such an elusive idea. People are like, I'm mindfully walking. Yeah, that's like, well, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, talk to me.
Okay, so a practice of mindfulness. So just as a working definition, I kind of touched on it earlier. Mindfulness in the from the perspective of the course that I teach, was founded by a guy by the name of John Abate back in the late 70s, right? So I'm going to give you the brief history. In the late 70s, John Abate started a course for healing veterans that were coming back from the Vietnam War and experiencing PTSD. And at the time, in 1979, 1980, PTSD wasn't really on the radar in the clinical world, right? So Kabat-Zinn has his background as a clinical psychologist, and like was working at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, but he spent a long time studying Eastern traditions of healing, spent time in India and things of this nature. So learning yoga, meditation, all this, and really was embodying these practices, bringing them back and formulating this ability to help people to look at their pain, to look at their trauma. So he said, mindfulness is when we are able to pay close attention on purpose without judgment. So we're really just, when we say just be in the present moment, man, well, that's really what we're trying to do, is just to pay attention, good or bad, not label attachments, not get into habitual cycles of how we cope with things. So vis-a-vis drinking, drugs, alcohol abuse, whatever, shopping, eating, etc. Like we have those, I feel like everyone's got their thing, right? Maybe you don't, and good for you. You're perfect, and that's wonderful. Like I want to meet you.
Somehow you escaped it.
Somehow, well, yeah, right. But somehow you escaped the samsara of life. But I'm just trying to get at that the mindfulness. And when you ask, like, what does it mean to mindfully walk, mindfully eat, mindfully speak? It is really just, there's no striving to be perfect. There's no striving to be right. It's just looking at, paying close attention, and recognizing it's not you. It's not your true nature. It's not what God or source or the universe would have you to believe is, the way. It's just being present. And when you're present, you have an opportunity to then find a creative way of responding, if it's even needed, responding to yourself, responding to others. So we talk about how to communicate with others mindfully, how to actively listen, how to pay attention and give ourselves the compassion and the care that we need through just listening. Our bodies tell us so much. The physical body tells us so much about where we are in this moment. Our minds obviously can tell us, what's going on through the cascade of emotion.
Yeah.
The mind and the body are intrinsically connected, and we learn this in the program. So we do things like scanning the body, laying down and just being still, and just going from body part to body part and paying particular attention to what does it feel like to feel your toes, moving up to your leg, moving up to your belly, and so on. And all that is just a training of the mind, of you being able to just pay attention. The thoughts still come in, and you just watch them come in. Instead of following it, trying to resolve things, you come back to the anchor, right? And so we use these things in mindfulness, like the breath. Like the breath is an easy one for us. It's constantly there. It will be there for as long as we're walking around this earth. We have the opportunity to just tune into the breath. So if you're meditating, for instance, you may use a mantra, or you may tune into the breath and just following the natural cycle of the breath. All you're doing is coming back to a place where I like to call a place of home. And that place of home can be wherever you want to put it in your body, but I like to think it's heart-centered. Yeah. So if somebody like me is recovering from a traumatic accident and I'm going through this, I hit and run, all these things, I'm future casting about what is going to happen next. Where am I going to find happiness and joy, and losing cycling or money or whatever, all that stuff, like the nuances of life. We have something of a tool to be able to come back and say, that's all going to keep coming, but why not just pay close attention to what's happening with me in this moment? And perhaps there's some wisdom and insight instead of me just reacting, instead of me making some. We constantly want to make things better. Intuitively, we may know that I'm forcing a square peg through a round hole, and maybe just sit with it for a minute.
Yeah.
Even just a minute of pause.
Yeah.
So that's what mindfulness is. Sorry for the long-winded,
No,
but that's
I
really
like
what
it.
mindfulness teaches us.
I think it's it's such an experiential thing too, right? So the power of all these practices and techniques is, it's oftentimes elusive or hard to describe, but if you get to experience it, like you're like, oh yeah, mindful, I get it. Or I'm in the moment. Or you have I imagine you had some days where you're like, I have to go to PT in 2 hours, and oh no, like I can't do it. So maybe you could frame it around that and how you would apply some of your tools to deal with that. Or
yeah, interestingly enough, it was not so much about like I've got to go do something, but when I'm doing it, that's when I'm employing the technique.
Cool.
Just paying attention to, this is pain. This is pain. I don't want to say welcome, because that sounds a little woo-woo to welcome the pain, but I would recognize it. This is pain. This is not John's pain. This is not John's pain that'll be here forever. This is pain in the moment. This is what pain feels like. It still sucks. It still doesn't feel good. It doesn't necessarily go away. But there are glimpses if you practice with anything, just like taking, for example, thoughts when you're meditating. There are glimpses, or what I might say is like a gap in your consciousness, that you actually experience, like you said, like a present moment awareness, or something like, in psychology, I think it's called flow, right? When you're in flow, you're doing something that you're completely in the moment. You're in the moment. Bicycle racing, there's a lot of flow in bicycle racing. Yeah. If you're cornering on a race course at 35 miles an hour with 80 other cyclists around you, you're not thinking about like taxes are due tomorrow or where am I going to, like, what am I eating for lunch after this? You are totally in the moment. So we find ourselves in the moment just through lots of different ways, but the mindfulness opportunity gives you the ability to practice, I guess, and just sit quietly.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting. They're interesting topics. I love them. And I find that I love some meditations, some prayers, all these things. I mantra, if you want to call it, instead of prayer or what have you.
Well, I want to ask you a question with your practice. Have you thought about like why, or maybe not why, what is your practice preparing you for? Or it's a tool, but what would you say in your experience that tool allows you to do?
I think currently, it's a great question, but the first thing that popped in my head just now, so I'll talk to that, is that it's A-type, control freak, controlling in nature. Maybe A-type has got nothing to do with it. Let's just say controlling in nature. And so I think death is the ultimate lack of control, meaning that generally speaking, we don't get to know how, when, or where, and that what's next. Although, and I'll speak for me, some people might have tremendous insight into what's next and all these things. And I believe that people have that insight. And I'll try to answer the question, but I like to think of it this way: like Michael Jordan is and a gifted athlete, right? Like he could do things that no human could do, right? And so I believe that there are people out there that have those same physical gifts, but let's say they're spiritual gifts, right? And I would also go farther to say that if you go hang out at Michael Jordan's basketball camp, just the fact that you're around him, your game is going to be elevated. You're going to be better. You're going to increase your skill set faster. You're going to, all these things, right? And I would say that the same thing is true in a spiritual nature, right? You find, I'm not saying I'm that guy. I'm just saying that I believe, I used to think no one could have insight, but now I'm like, oh yeah, there might be motherfuckers can jump from the free throw line and slam dunk a basketball, right? So perhaps on the spiritual side, someone can. So
are you hanging out? Are you one to hang around the camp then? Are you hanging around the camp with your practice? Is that what you're saying? Is that the metaphor?
Yeah. And I'm saying that I get to, as I unwind and as I stare into death and what death means and the illusion of death, and I can get really, really lofty really quick, but we can save that for another podcast episode. But I think my current practice and me unwinding and finding more peace in the moment as I come to terms with the end, whatever that means, whether maybe there's not an end, however you want to say it. But I think that I get to bring currently that peace, that those illusions, as those drift away, I get to be the light for whether people consciously or unconsciously aware that they get to benefit from that. Is that was just insane. Thank you, listeners. But does that answer your question? Did I answer it, or was
no? It's beautiful, and I think that you touched on something that's really interesting, because I would say that the number one cause of fear and anxiety is the existential crisis.
Yeah,
I mean, that is truly, and whether we know it or not, it's an underlying, biological, metaphysical, it runs through us. But I think what I'm driving at too, and I was curious, is just, for me, my practice, I'll wake up some mornings and have what I would label a terrible meditation sit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've been thinking for the last 30 minutes. And I'm like, quite okay, because there's another opportunity to just sit. And I think it is just a matter of just like slowing down, pausing, paying attention. And for me, I'm a pioneer of like journeying into understanding the mind. I want to understand the mind.
Yeah.
Because as a good friend of mine likes to say, and you've heard this before, it's a wonderful servant and a terrible master, and so it's not that I'm trying to master the mind, but I'm just trying to explore the recesses of what makes thoughts tick and how do those come up. And consciousness is a wonderful thing to kind of like delve into, and the practice gives you the opportunity to just explore it and see it. Yeah.
I love it. I'm all in on it. I love I'm like, okay, if I have a quote unquote bad meditation, right? I'm like, whatever. I can literally have the worst meditation, whatever that means, right? Where monkey mind is in full display and it's trying to pull me out of the seat, right? Like that's the worst, when it's like whatever the thought is, I can't just let it go or flow through or love it, but it inspires me to or incites action, right? Like get out of your chair or whatever and go fix whatever it is. Right?
Go get up and do it. And that's energy just pulling you and drawing you, that just may be just calling to you at that moment.
Right. And I find that with meditate, most of the time I can, that still will go through and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. But my point is that I can be obsessed during meditation and running scenarios and trying to come back to breath and all these things. And I can be like, meditation's done. And then I have an amazing day. I'm like, it's all good,
Yeah.
So I think that's speaking to meditation and what you were talking about, I think that's a fascinating thing. It's like, okay, that was just that moment and the mind was cranking and it's all good. And I love that,
Yeah. You're honoring what's coming up. And I think that's really important, and then because we get into labeling and judging and, and shaming, and it's like, no need.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Did I answer your question though?
You totally did. And I think I was just curious to know what your practice, and you said it perfectly, what your practice meant to you and those tools and what we get out of it. And I think that, the byproduct of it also isn't that how we treat other people, and our actions, our actions and words have profound effects on people.
Yeah.
So having the opportunity to just, at least for me, it gives me pause. It gives me pause. Yeah. Which I need. I need pause because this mouth runs fast when I allow it to.
Yes. I'm in the space right now where I'm like, the more I'm in that pause moment and the more I'm content with myself, my thoughts, and my circumstances, the more that I'm happy with everybody else's circumstances. And the more that I don't see them as being unhappy with their circumstances, that's the illusion, right? The illusion is that other people need to be different so they can feel better, when it's like, well, when I'm centered and in the moment, like everything's good. Even the people that normally I'd be like, you'd feel better if, or you'd,
Yeah, because something guides you to say that that's really not for you to say, or to be able to honor whatever that person's going through, or acceptance. I mean, this a lot of this falls on, letting go and accepting.
Yeah.
Right. And when you can do it and not do it grudgingly, that's when you're in that space. I think that's what you're talking about. When you're able to just let things flow, let it be. Yeah.
So now you've got some classes going on. You're actively teaching MBSR, something that like physically was very powerful for you, helped you heal physically and mentally. These tools have been awesome in your life. You've taken classes, you've gotten like sign off to be like, hey, I get to teach this stuff legit, right?
Right. Yeah. Teaching. It's an 8-week course, and I'm teaching the course. I've been teaching it over Zoom, but I'm looking forward to actually starting to teach it in person too, at least in San Diego, and locally, and be able to get people together in a room and share that energy. Right. But
yeah. Cool. And then I'm looking at your website. If anybody listening is like, hey, yeah, I want more of what John is talking about, or I want that. Maybe they didn't get shellacked by a car, but maybe they're feeling a little tension in life, and they're like,
shellac. I love it.
I could use some new tools new ways to think, to heal the mind and body, perhaps, right? And that can be subtle or more. You get hit by a car. But so Mindful Foundation, I'm looking over at your website right here, mindfulfoundations.org, mindfulfoundations.org, where anybody can go dive in on the John train, man.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Misha. Yeah, no, it's great. I'm just so happy. This is a new path for me, teaching, and it's funny because this course is teaching me so much. Like the people that come into this course, just all different walks of life, different ages, different stories, different traumas, different pain, and the connection, the uniqueness of sharing, and this isn't something where you come in and you have to, pour out your childhood trauma or anything like that, but it touches so many people in different ways. And the connection that we make in the class over the 8 weeks is really beautiful. And I just get to keep learning, man. Like, they call us a teacher and you're certified to teach, but really it's just about what I can bring through my training, what I can bring. I'm facilitating, but I'm learning from the people, and I'm learning that we're also connected. We all suffer, we all experience happiness, we all experience joy, we all experience pain, and we all get to do it together. And we all find ways to transcend some things and gain some insight. And we're not here to fix anything. It's just a matter of, how we are able to, like I said earlier, just creatively respond is really, kind of a nice way of looking at it,
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I like it. And, so people can go join a class, jump in at your website. And, what else, man? I feel all of a sudden I'm like, man, I might have, like, did I say too much? But,
I love our conversations, man. I'm glad that we got connected again, especially letting everyone know how we, met, and in that business environment, and the path that you're on is just inspiring, man. It's just so cool to watch you. We've both grown so much, I think, in just a short period of time.
Man. Yeah, truly. Right.
Yeah. It's just that it's so you just, and our relationship, Misha, teaches me that you just never know. You just don't know, man. You think you know. You think you know. And here we are, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, you and I are sitting out with our long hair blowing in the breeze, having a cup of tea or a kombucha, listening to wind chimes, dude. It's like, and from that high pressure environment to a place of, and one's not good or worse than the other. It's just where we're at, man.
That's where we're at, right? That's where we're at. I love it. Did we miss anything, or was there anything that you were hoping to talk about that we maybe didn't address, or I don't know if address is the right word, or highlight?
We talked a lot about some really wonderful things, and I'm glad that you've given me the opportunity to just share some things, with you and my story, and I hope your listeners will appreciate it. Yeah.
Love you, John.
Namaste.
Love
you too.
All right,
man. Brother.
Peace out.
Thank you for spending time with me today. As someone who is committed to growth and service to this world, I so appreciate your willingness to come with me, go within, and serve our world through change. If you found value in this podcast and you know someone who can use this message, share this episode with them. Share it so our mission can be achieved one episode at a time. And of course, subscribe so you can hear more. And lastly, for more resources on what has helped me on my journey and can help you on yours, go to belove.media/resources. That's BELOVE.media/resources. Thank you again for listening.